Okay, so why don't you introduce yourself?
Chuck Wilson, we're here at Bootlegger Guitar.
And how long have you been here?
This location, the store, about 2 months.
And how long have you been in business?
More than 8 years now with Bootlegger Guitar. It's heading into its 9th year.
And you had some relatives in sort of in the promotional side of things, did you not?
Well, I have relatives that were in the music industry back when jazz was real popular in LA, and that was Howard Rumsey and the Lighthouse All-Stars. I was fortunate to kind of grow up in there, heard a lot of great artists, and I got to meet their families and hang out with their kids and such. So, fun way to grow up around here.
How old were you when you started playing?
Probably 12, 13, I would guess.
And you just decided one day to start playing, or what happened? Why did you get interested?
Well, like a lot of us, we were listening to music, right? We were listening to, the Beatles turned everybody on to the British invasion, and then we have the great bands like the Stones and such coming to America and playing music, and we would collect albums as kids, which was a big thing that has been lost. So I went to a pawn shop, picked up a guitar, got a Mel Bay book, started just noodling on a guitar, learning chords, I guess, it was like I wanted to, make music. I wanted to see if I could emulate some of the stuff I was listening to.
So did you have a band early on when you were in high school and stuff?
Yeah, I played basketball, so that kept me pretty busy. But I had friends like on the team and stuff that played guitar. So we hung out and we played and, get some girls to hang out with us. That was always part of the plan, right? Play guitar, get some girls to hang out around. But no, I look back at high school. I love sports. I'm glad I played sports, but I kind of wish I also got involved in the band or anything musically in high school. But I was really concentrating on sports.
So when did you actually start playing live?
I had some opportunities to just sit in with different people throughout my teens, 20s and stuff, but I wasn't much of a musician. A guy, Mark Fichette, who's a teacher here, a good friend of mine in the Redondo area, I got to a point where I wanted to become a musician and understand a guitar, like you might understand a piano or what have you, because a lot of guitar players are just, like kind of rock players or blues players, and they never really get past that. So I wanted to learn it from the standpoint of an actual instrument, and Mark taught me that and helped me to write music and learn enough theory to be able to understand music. So Mark would have different blues jams and different things going on that I would be a part of and get to play in front of people. I got into rally racing, car racing. I was a performance rally driver. So that kind of for like 10 years kind of still play guitar, but I wasn't taking lessons or studying. And then when I finally retired from that, that's when I realized, okay, let's take music seriously. And so with Mark, and then I formed a band called the Old Dirty Blues Band. We played everywhere around the South Bay. And then it I guess it broke up. We all just kind of went different ways. And then COVID hit, and that kind of ended it. And then after COVID, I just put some feelers out that I wanted to make a new band, a new blues-oriented band. And I was fortunate. I got responses from people I've known for a long time, also new musicians, and we've put together a cool band.
And so at what point did you get into, and what interested you in getting into the custom guitar business?
Yeah, I opened up Studio 637. It's a recording studio in Hermosa Beach. And I've been going to NAMM forever, the music convention industry show. And I was selling out of the studio. I had a few lines like Reverend, Excellent Company. I could like maybe 3 different boutique guitar lines. And I had success selling like in the lobby of the studio because we had musicians coming in and out all day. So then I met Mr. Ken Kim at NAMM with his company Muse in Seoul, Korea. And I gave him some of my ideas and he liked them. And we just started working. This is at least 6-7 years ago.
Oh, nice.
I was already using his company, but the owner of the company didn't know me, and I was just kind of using his sales associate as a contact. After we met, he said, "No, from now on, you'll deal direct with me, and you have access to my engineering department, and we're going to start making some great guitars." And I said, "Perfect. Let's do it." And it's been a great, marriage ever since. He's a very good person, and he makes very good guitars.
And so now you're going to branch into actually hosting some events, right? So
Right.
tell us about that.
Yeah, well, we carry a common bond, right? You and I. I grew up unknowingly loving the blues, and then it wasn't until some bands explained to me what the blues were, one being the Rolling Stones or like the Animals or the Doors and such. I started realizing that the majority of the music I was listening to that I loved was blues based rock. So then I back then we went to the library, we went to the guitar store. There used to be stores, record stores where you could look at albums and you could look at the blues department and stuff. And you would start just buying blues albums and reading about the musicians, and then it all kind of eventually made sense to me when I understood the history of the blues, how it affected American musicians like Elvis Presley, a white musician that pretty much brought the black sound, blues, up-tempo to the white viewing people. What's the word for it? The people that weren't listening to the Southern blues. So that started that exposure, and then like the bands again from England and such, helped someone like me understand and study the history of the blues. And it's fascinating. Everybody should do it.
Do you have anything specifically you want to add or talk about? Feel free.
Okay. In loving the blues, I'm a blues musician. You've seen us play. I as a vocalist as well. I'm not a singer, but I've kind of learned to be able to present the blues because it's a story. You're not singing a ballad, which I would never do. You're explaining something in a story. And when you understand the roots of it, how it came out of, a very bad thing in slavery, and the slave people bringing their rhythms and sounds from Africa and the Caribbean, which eventually became the sounds of the blues and gospel and going into jazz and all. It touches everything. So when you understand where it came from, you have to be very respectful of what it is. And I'm definitely respectful to the blues. Eric Clapton was quoted in saying, as a blues musician, that he does not imitate a Southern black vocal sound. He doesn't imitate, he uses his vocal sound, meaning that's being respectful. And I definitely believe that. So I don't try to copy what a black blues sound in vocals is. I try to present it my way, and I present it in a way that's well received. People enjoy it, right? Hope that makes sense, but I'm not a black Southern man, so I have to be very respectful. Because I do respect the music, and I respect where it came from, and I respect how hard it's been for the artists to scrape out a living doing the blues.
You said that a number of local blues musicians now are using your guitars, your custom guitars. Who's using your guitars?
Yeah, I'm very blessed. Short story. Albert Trepanier, incredible drummer from New Orleans, is a good friend of mine. I've used him for a drummer in my band when my regular drummer, and Albert's a professional, I mean, he's a gigging pro, when my drummer is not available, and Albert's wonderful about playing with us. I host a blues jam everybody's invited to in Lomita at Project Barley, and Albert brought Ray Bailey. Ray walks in, you don't know Ray, he just kind of shuffles in, and he's got a big smile on his face, and I go, hey, like, who are you? And Ray, and he goes, oh, do you play guitar? And he goes, a little, and, do you sing? A little. I go, well, good, well then, we'll have you be a part of the jam, right? So we did our set with Albert playing drums, and it was great. I mean, I feel good about it. People loved it. And then you realize, like, okay, we're going to bring up Albert, and then Albert comes up and stands next to me and starts performing. And then you realize, like, oh, shit. Like, where I'm comfortable, I'm well received, and, I'm a reasonably good blues guitar player and presenter of the blues. Ray is just a true pro. And his guitar playing is just, beautiful, phonetic, not phonetic, that's beautiful, fast, slow, he's all over the board. So much talent, so much feel, rhythm and blues, jazz, blues, all like tied in together when he solos and such. So I was just, thrilled to play with him. And he's the kind of guy that he says he's thrilled to play with me. It's very gracious. So we got Ray Bailey, who's now definitely a strong bootlegger artist. We have Albert Trepanier, who's a drummer, who jokingly wants to be a bootlegger artist because he's not a guitar player, but he is. Sure not going to turn Albert down. And Ray Lanz, who's another local rhythm and blues man out of South Central.
Lester Lanz, is he doing?
Yes, exactly. And Matt Bragg, is he up right now? No, the bass player that plays with. So Matt's playing.
He was with you the other night at Roscoe's,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, and he plays the ace bass, my headless bass, and I'm losing cut. Ray, that's okay. Ray plays a couple of my guitars. He's played the single barrel, he's played the Rye, now he's playing the Hounder, my brand new Hounder. He loves it. There's many videos he does for me that, of him composing incredible music on these guitars, right? So yeah, frankly, honestly, there's a forgotten LA blues scene. Like, Ray is my age, so when Ray was in his early 20s, he was able to play clubs up and down Western Vermont. Make money. These are pro musicians, but there were opportunities where you could go play and people could see great blues and not expensive tickets. Just go to a local club and hang out. And they were able to make a good living, and those days are gone. So It's kind of sad because these are definitely musicians that deserve to be heard. They're part of the history of LA blues. So I'm just trying to be making it aware. I'm a blues rock company. I don't pay artists, rock stars to play my gear. I won't do that. Yet I have them all across the world that love them. And then you meet like a Matt Braggs, the bass player, and I say, hey man, have you ever been he's played bass with everybody. Have you ever been offered a deal from Gibson or Fender? And he goes, no. No one's ever approached me. Whoa, that's kind of crazy to me. So I'm gathering these guys up and trying to give them some promotion so we can go back to making great blues. And we're going to make it here in the store.
You also told me that you make custom amplifiers. Tell us about what makes your amplifiers different from most amplifiers.
Okay. Well, first off, I don't have the ability to I'm working on this, but I am not like an electrical guy. I'm a guitar player, but I hear well, and I know I have many professional friends, and I know what they want. So I met a company at NAMM again, one of the few high fidelity China companies that make excellent products. And I said that I really liked the Blues 30 amp, but there were a couple things, it's a Vox Circuit 30, that I wanted changed, and we changed them together. So now this is a Bootlegger changed amp, and it's my most popular amp. It's the Blues 30, and it's all over Nashville. It's a killer amp.
You're using tubes now. I don't think that's very common, is it?
Yeah, all my amps. So the three models of amps I have are all tubes. Mm-hmm. No circuit, no computer chips, just the natural, clean or distorted sound. So I have it in the Vox clone. I have my new Dumble clone amps, which are amazing. There's a lot in those amps to understand the best way to get all these different tones that they can make. So I'm still trying to work with it, to learn it. And then I have my little Blues 5. So yeah, they're all tube driven. They're just vintage style amps where the actual tone crunch or distortion is happening because of the tubes being overdriven.
But that produces a much different sound, I think.
Yeah, there's arguments.
That was not a judgment call. That was
right. No, I mean
that was a compliment.
Oh yeah, no. It's when I'm playing guitar, I don't want a computer chip in an amp or a pedal to alter what I'm doing. There's a true sound that you're making from the guitar and into an amp. And the solid state amps, in my mind, they offer more things like, oh, you push this button, you get an automatic distortion or whatever. Or a tube amp, you have to play with the gain and the master volume and kind of dial in what you want. But when you dial it in, it's a completely, in my ear, better sound. That there's no way a digital amp can emulate what a really good tube amp can do. Not everybody agrees with me on that, but that's, I only play tube amps and I only sell tube amps for guitars. Basses are a little different. Basses, most of the successful medium price bass amps are not tubes.
Did you, so when you were playing at Roscoe's that time I saw you, were you playing your tube amps there?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I won't gig or anything. I've been fortunate to be able to play with Iron Butterfly at times. And Mike Panera, my friend, he had a gig in Virginia, West Virginia. So he hired me to be the second guitar. And I wasn't used to playing at that level. So we get to the fairgrounds, and we had a, mic and sound check. And, Mike was telling me that there'll be a backline, amps. And the backline was a Fender Twin Reverb they had for me. And I'm like, oh no, because it's just a different amp. It doesn't have, it's a great sounding California Beach Boy amp with the reverb and the tremolo and all that. But, for dirty blues, this is really not what it's meant for. So that's a tube amp, but boy, I miss my amp, because my amps tend to be, they crunch. Even at a jazz setting, you want to have a little bit of distortion, just something to kind of sustain the note. My designs are big into a clean chime, but then you can alter significantly the sound by overdriving the tubes. That's what I want.
You actually overdrive the tubes?
Yeah, I'm a sufferer of not understanding electronics well, but you can cause distortion by either feeding pushing the amp too hard, which causes the amp to clip and distort, and that causes distortion. Or you can starve an amp, a tube, with less power, and it will do unusual. In other words, if you have a tube and you want it in your hi-fi stereo system for at home, to turn discs, so you want a crystal clear tube, beautiful sound. You don't want to overdrive it, but us guitarists like overdrive. So we take the same or similar tubes and overdrive them to crunch.
But sometimes when you do that, you end up having the instruments swamp the vocal, is probably the best way to say it, and you can't hear the words.
Yeah, that's always more of that would be like a volume issue on the guitar.
So that has really nothing to do with the amps. It's you're setting the controls on the amps.
Yes, this is the nature of guitar players. I don't know. I have to yell at my drummer. He yells at me. Like when I first started gigging, we didn't use monitors, so all we heard was, well, if I'm in the microphone, it's just projecting to the room, and then I hear it whenever it bounces back or whatever, right? So then we finally incorporated monitors, so the vocals are coming back at us. But the problem with that is you hear that and you think you're that loud in the room, but maybe you're not, because you're hearing it not through the PA system, but through the monitor. It's where you need to have someone that's controlling the board. So like when we were at Roscoe's, they have a sound man there. He should be controlling the levels of the microphones so that you're heard. Because that's always a problem. You need to have someone in the room.
Always a problem.
Yeah,
Yes.
you need to have someone that's monitoring the sound.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned there were some rock groups you mentioned that had your guitars that were using them?
I just sold a bass to Steven, a cool dude, plays bass for Casey and the Sunshine Band. So that bass is on tour with Casey. We just saw their show. It was a lot of fun. Roger Coles is a bass player. He was with Unknown Hinson, which was a 30-year hard rocking Southern band, free band. Unknown Hinson is now retired, the band, but Roger plays in a lot of bands and very much a bootlegger artist. I have Tommy Stillwell in Nashville, Kenny Kramer in Nashville, to name a few. I got guys everywhere. I can't think of. There's a list of them on the website, but a lot of these guys, like Tommy Stillwell and Kenny Kramer in Nashville, they're able to make a living because it's not as high a cost of living as Los Angeles, in Nashville or the close communities, and they can go out and play 6-7 nights a week and get paid and do studio gigs. In LA, that's next to impossible. I don't know anybody, unless they're retired or they're a pro, high level pro. Everybody has a day job. So
There was a period where it wasn't like that, though, right?
yeah,
I mean, I
definitely there was a period where you had the major jazz bands toured the country. They would go, Lighthouse would be one of their stops, in Hermosa. So yeah, they were making a living. Blues bands will, like maybe Robert Cray, I can think of one. There's like Joe Bonamassa, there's a couple out there. I'm forgetting Samantha Fish, perhaps.
So, like, I know from experience that from 1980 to 1990, there were hundreds of blues performances every month in West LA and Hollywood.
Yeah.
There were a lot of performers making a living back, blues guys making a full-time living.
Yeah.
And well-deserved, frankly,
Yeah.
But I think you're right. Nowadays, they're all...
Well, what Albert Tapani told me was, that's a good way to go homeless. Try to be a full-time musician right now. Yeah, it's just sad, music seems to be undervalued, and perhaps the internet, has played a part in that. But, and I also don't like the blues being a contest. Like, I don't think you can say, "Oh, I won a contest," singing the blues. I just don't get it. It's an art form, So yeah, I don't know anybody. It's very very depressing. My band, we're all like, older men. We've made our money, so to speak. But we play like a brewery. Let's say we get a check for $200 and $100 in tips. That's $300 split 5 ways. And we're carrying our amps and the PA system. We're having to lug everything. So yeah, I mean, how can anybody? So you're playing 4 or 5 nights a week, making maybe $300 a night for 5 guys in LA. You can't. You're not making it. It's just how it is. But it was the frustrating part. And I'm not knocking the girl pouring the beer. I love the girl pouring the beer. But you look over and there's a girl like just. They're selling beers at a brewery about as fast as they can pour them, right? And, she's making minimum wage and tips. It's a little frustrating. You go like, I wish I was cute and could pour beer because there she's making, $100 an hour, and, so I guess it pays to just be a cute girl that can pour beer.
I think there's just an eroding of standards, I mean, think about it. Football players make millions of dollars. Baseball players make millions of dollars. And I guess there's some talent to that, but it's not even close to the kind of talent that blues musicians have.
Yeah.
That's my opinion. So.
Well, I'm not like... it takes a lot of practice and a lot of energy to be able to perform the blues live in front of people. You can't just, I'm just going to do it and go do it.
You can't phone it in, right?
It takes, you have to put the time in, and that's years and years of studying, and perhaps, unless you have some God-given talent. And then you get to that point and you're really not making any money. You're just, again, unless you're a national touring act, you're not making much money. And even those guys sometimes, like if they're, the record label puts them on the tour or something, they may not be getting a whole lot from the shows.
So you want to help the shows, the monthly show you're going to have, will that help the guys?
Well, no, not like, it's not going to be financially rewarding because I'm not charging tickets for people to come in here. It's really like when my band plays, we play somewhere and then somebody hears us, they hire us for a gig.
Right.
You know, like some of our best paid gigs have been like private parties for yacht clubs and stuff. And then you can make some good money. You know, but that happens like twice a year, right? So like what I'm trying to do is expose the music out there so that then, you know, there hopefully could become more of an avenue of getting these guys like down in the beach area. Like Ray mentioned that, Bailey, that he would like to come down and play some of the beach clubs and stuff. And, you know, hopefully he's coming down here and people seeing the videos and everything, you know, that might happen.
Yeah, sadly, most people won't venture down to South Central to hear. You know, I mean, when I tell people that go down there and record, right, they look at me like, "Are you crazy?" But no, the music's good. You have to go.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. Well, that's true.
But
I mean, people
bringing it up here will make it, I think, much more available. So.
Yeah, and you know the big ugly elephant in the room is I don't know if these beach clubs will be like, oh yeah, I want a 68-year-old black guy performing to 30-year-old or 20-year-old kids. There's a demographic involved, right? So I'm hoping to break that. You know, I'm hoping to say, forget it. You know, I'm not saying that's how these clubs think, but there is that reality. I mean, there's been clubs we know we can't play because a blues musician is expected to be black. You know, we don't fit the, you know, and it isn't so much, I don't look at that like, I look at it like it's simply a business decision. You know, like if you're going to go to Hawaii and you want to sit and listen to a guy playing ukulele and singing, well, hopefully you got a guy that speaks Hawaiian and can sing Polynesian stuff, right? They don't want to see me doing that because I'm not a native Hawaiian. The blues is strongly within the black community. I mean, it is their art form. You know, it's theirs to decide its direction, in my opinion. So I, as a white performer of the blues, just respect that and try to present it accordingly. So yeah, I mean, if I can help get these guys some exposure, then I think I'm paying back a little bit for all the joy I've had listening to blues. And so...
And that's kind of why I participate too, and try and archive and record and write about history of the blues here and what's going on now, because it's an art form that we just can't let die. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah, well, it's as, you know, equally as American as bluegrass. You know, it's the same. You know, the bluegrass came from the hills of Wisconsin, and, you know, their stories are amazing, you know, and I love bluegrass music. And, you know, the blues came from primarily the South with the black enslaved people who then, you know, became emancipated and then, you know, didn't have a clue what the hell they were going to do with themselves, because if you could only imagine all of a sudden being free, I mean, that would be an unbelievable feeling and probably fear. So some of the talented musicians that came from the villages that the slaves lived in under their owners, they figured out a way they could make money by singing music. You know, a lot of really interesting books about slavery, but one of them was if you were a talented musician, slave, let's say guitar, and could sing blues or gospel, whatever, you may be given certain priorities that the other slaves didn't have. You may even be able to go into the house at night and perform at parties, or that the owner might lease you out to another estate that's having a party so you could entertain. So I'm assuming at some point they kind of figured out, like, well, if we're more musical, we have a value. And then after the emancipation, they started to figure out that, okay, we can play in a street corner and make some money. And that's when, in New York, they started sending down the guys in the suitcases, with the new recording machine. And then the rest is history, right? They found Robert Johnson, recorded him in that motel room. And some great stories about that I've read. Robert Johnson said he made enough money to live really well for a month. That's what he got paid for that, which is now one of the greatest records in Robert Johnson, the Crossroads. So he said, yeah, I lived high in the hog, for a month on that money. And then he said, like, later on in the year, he's walking downtown and the stores would have a speaker outside, and he heard the songs that were recorded, in the motel room. So he went in to buy, the album or whatever it was they were selling, and they refused to sell it to him because he's black. So he's saying, you don't understand. That's me, right? So the book says they allowed him to buy one album. Yeah, so they weren't treated that well. There were no royalties, but that indeed opened up to a lot of people in America the sound of the blues. And then they started hiring some of these blues artists. These stories are funny. They would hire gospel blues and stuff. And they would put them out on tour with white musicians. And they would go to a circus, right? And they would have a stage. And one side of the stage, was the polka and the white music. And the other side, was the gospel, the blues. And, back then, a lot of the women were kind of, if you're a farmer in Ohio, you've never seen a, tall black woman out there shaking and singing the blues, right? So apparently, a lot of the guys that went to the fair were caught by their wives sneaking around the other side of the stage. Because they're like, that's where all the fun is, So that's part of the history of it. They actually put them on tour, with these different acts and such. So, then it took, believe it was Buddy Guy, I think it was Buddy Guy that said, America, you had the blues all along. You just didn't know it existed until the Rolling Stones gave it to you. And that was like, whoa, that's true, because they gave it to me. And another story, breaking the barrier, was the Stones were asked to do a TV show, and they refused. Like one of those 30-minute, maybe shindig, whatever it was back then, And they said, no, not unless we can bring a black blues man with us. So the Stones said no, and the station said no. And then short time later, they got back to him and said, well, we really want you. Well, and so they acquiesced, and I believe it was Buddy Guy they brought with them. So it was like the first black blues musician to be on, what was considered white TV. So just amazing stuff to me, So the story of the blues is rooted in the story of America.
Do you know much about the story of the blues in L.A.?
Well, no, and that's what I told Reagan stuff. I didn't even know it was there. I'm raised going to Gardena, I'm going to Narbonne. We're in the same division sport-wise, but we didn't know each other, same age. And, he's going up to South Central playing in an area that back then you just didn't really think, oh, I'm going to go up there, but I would have if I had known the clubs were there. I had no clue. There wasn't anybody down here telling the white surfer kids to go up and listen to blues on, up in Vermont and South Central, right? We just didn't know.
You were a surfer?
Well, I grew up at the beach, so sure, I wasn't like, just in the reality of things, I grew up the beach loving music. Ray grew up living in like Compton, going to Gardena High. And, all of those worlds were wide open to him, where me, I didn't know.
I believe Ray also went to Jefferson
Did he?
Elementary.
Okay.
And I think that's what it was. And there was a guy there, Sam Brown. You ever heard of him?
No.
He was a very famous teacher. He taught a lot of the old jazz guys.
Yeah.
That's where Ray learned.
Okay. Very
He's
cool.
got classical.
Yeah. Well, I was I was fortunate. I was going to the Lighthouse. And then when Howard closed the Lighthouse, I went to Concerts by the Sea, which was a cool jazz venue. And we had rock venues down here, so I was, just going to more of the stuff that, it was easy for me to get to and catch music. I did go down to Long Beach, catch blues. That was in my 20s, and I started, I started realizing, there's more to music than just, the local South Bay scene. We were punk, we're reggae now. Jazz was, of course, huge. Remember the Latitude 20?
I do remember Latitude 20, yes.
What was
And I've
that
been
great
there a bunch
music
of
or
times.
what?
Yes.
Polynesian jazz music coming through there. I went there quite a bit. That place was just amazing. It's in my local community, but it's made up like as you're in Hawaii, and all the waitresses are like Hawaiian, and you go in there, it's just like they got birds going quack, quack, and all the great Latin or Hawaiian Polynesian bands, jazz bands came through there. So we had a lot of jazz around here.
Yeah, I really remember your uncle's place as being like the center
Yeah.
of jazz. And I think I remember hearing blues there. I'm pretty sure I went to one of those.
No,
to
I think
hear-
I think there were different types of jazz back then, or blues and stuff, but it was predominantly Latin or black blues that was played there. And it was definitely, there were, was it Charlie Bird one of the guys, they weren't all black bands, but it was predominantly the black sounding
I
jazz.
remember seeing B.B. King in one of his clubs.
Could very
Maybe
well
it
be,
was
yeah.
Concerts by the Sea, I think
Yeah.
it was, yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely, just black influenced, Latin influenced music. The guys with the fros and the bell bottoms and the boots and good looking girls going in there and dancing, and it was. I met Will Chamberlain in there, so yeah. Well, a lot of the Lakers went down there.
Wow.
Yeah. So no, I regret that I didn't know that I could go up to LA and catch the music, but even driving to Long Beach back then, you felt like, you're just. I've had nothing but great experiences, but it was just going to areas that are a little, what's the word for it? Have to be a little careful.
All right, well, I think we kind of covered the gamut here. So
Cool, man.